Armageddon. A battle of war, end times, death everywhere, explosions, nuclear war. Life no longer exists. It's a battle between Satan and Jesus Christ that takes place in the Valley of Megiddo. That's what the stories you will hear and see in the news, TV, and movies. But is it a literal battle or a figurative battle? Let's go ahead and we're going to read 12 through 16 right now. I'll be reading out of the New American Standard Version. The sixth angel poured out his bowl in the great river, the Euphrates, and its river was... Elmer Fudd will be teaching your Revelation class tonight. Whew. And its water... poured out his bowl in the great river, the Euphrates, and its water was dried up so that the way would be prepared for the kings from the east. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs. For they are spirits of demons, performing signs which go out to the kings of the whole world, to gather them together for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. Talking about the battle of Armageddon, the literalist will tell you. Verse 15 is almost like an aside from Christ. It says, "Behold, I am coming like a thief." Third beatitude here in the book of Revelation. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes, so that he will not walk about naked and men will not see his shame. And they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Har-Mageddon. Har-Mageddon. Hey, Al. Where's Alan? Alan? Hey, can you click and make sure I have control over there? I have lost control. But that's okay, I'm going to be positive. Alan, can you advance my slide, please? Next. That's good right there. Try this again. Okay. Jump to... Sorry, I apologize for the technical difficulties. But there are some things up here I want you to see. Does that work? Hey, what do you know? Tell me about the Euphrates, the great river, the Euphrates. What do we know about it? Where have we heard about it? Miss Carol, did you have your hand? Okay, so that's one place. Anyone else? Anyone else? Have Andy? Present day Iraq. Okay. The literal Euphrates was the eastern boundary of that? Israel, exactly. It was also the boundary for what? The Roman Empire. Okay. In fact, from the east, and we talked about this last week, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, and everybody, the Parthians came through from the east and attacked Rome. We talked about before that in Gibbon's book, The Fall of the Roman Empire, that the 3 things that he says that caused the fall of the Roman Empire was eternal decay, natural disasters, and outside forces. So we look at this and say, the sixth angel poured out his bowl in the great river, the Euphrates, and its water was dried up. So Is this a literal drying up of the Euphrates River or a spiritual drying up of the Euphrates River? What is it referring to? Dad, what's in your big book of knowledge? What does Jim say? Okay. Anyone? Gary, is this a literal thing here? What do you believe it is? Bowls are being poured out into the realm of which Satan operates. So if it was removing or drying up the Euphrates River, then would you say that the separation between good and evil, or that boundary, was being dried up, and so judgment was coming? Okay. Lee? Okay, what are some other examples in the Old Testament to where there was a drying up of a body of water? Red Sea, Jordan River. So we see that. We see here. Let me ask you this then. Gary says that this is talking about the spiritual realm, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, because generally when people talk about the book of Revelation and Armageddon, they're talking about a literal battle that takes place at a location called Armageddon, okay, Mount Megiddo. We'll get to where that's located at, and if you can find it on a map, that'll be interesting for you to show us. But could there be dual meaning in this verse? That the Roman Empire's judgment was coming, it was going to be the end of the Roman Empire, and it would also be applicable that the spiritual war, God's judgment, would come on those who are evil. Nick, what do you think? So you think that's a possibility? Okay. Who are the kings from the east? If this is a spiritual battle only, who are the kings from the east? Whoever God chooses to come and do the cleansing. But how is that spiritual? That's physical. Okay, and again, that would be in the literal sense coming from the east, correct? And the Parthians were great bow hunters, wonderful horsemen. Who are the kings from the east? You know who Lindsay will tell you it is? Hal Lindsey, in the late great Planet Earth, a futurist in his point of view, will tell you that this is the 200 million man army coming from the east. And I'll have a graphic up here in a little bit to show you that. There we go. We can see that they were attacked. The kings from the east some believe to be an army of God. However, if we look in Ephesians chapter 6, 10 through 18, we're told that our battle is not a battle that's physical, correct? Satan is all about the physical. Another 300 Christian men, and I don't know their faith, I'm just telling you that they're designated as Christian men, died this morning because they would not convert to Islam. 3,000 women and children in the past 2 days, taken to be used. That's Satan. What's the sword of Jesus Christ? Truth. Is Christ going to come back and wage a physical war? Do you think so, Wayne? What then? Why do you think that? Because we're going to get into it a little bit more, but you say no. But shouldn't those who have done such horrible things to Christians be punished? They will be. On this earth necessarily? Not necessarily. Eternally. Andy? I said what was physical? No, I didn't say that. Could be physical.
But the thing is, does not the Lord use the physical or the spiritual?
Absolutely. Who did he raise up to defeat the Israelites time and time again? Yeah, kings from the east. And when you look and you read, you have to understand that there can be, like, we were talking earlier, a dual meaning. When we look at the kings of the east, and I think I even have this in the notes, it's better so the kings from the east is to be kings from the rising of the sun. So boy, doesn't that look right tie into China and Japan and everything over there coming from the east? And you look at it, you're like, wow, prepared for the kings from the east. Miss Johnny, did you have your hand up, dear? The armor of God, Ephesians 6, chapter. Yeah, well, it's here. That spiritual battle is taking place right now, right? Right. And how do we fight that battle? Through God's help, through the truth, through the Word, through the breastplate of righteousness, those type of things. That's what we're told. But we're such a tactile type of people because we like to touch it, feel it, that when we talk about spiritual battles, it's difficult for us. But our role as a Christian is not for the United States to defeat all of our enemies or go to different countries and protect everybody and defeat everybody. I'm not saying that there aren't good things about helping people, don't get me wrong, but our role as a Christian is to fight Satan one-on-one and help your brothers and sisters in that spiritual war. If you're sitting in the first century and you're hearing this letter read to you about, hey, you need to remain faithful unto death, Revelation 2:10, and how long, Revelation 6, 9 through 11, hey, this is coming. This Roman Empire will fall away. When we get to talk about the dragon and the beast and the false prophet, they know instantly when they hear who this is. When they talk about the whore of Babylon, they know. It's our struggle to look through this and say, okay, is this literal? Is this figurative? We're dealing with apocalyptic literature. What's so amazing is that people will sit here and read this and talk about the three frogs, and they'll say that everything is literal. Well, except the three frogs that are going out. So it's a real dragon, it's a real false prophet, it's a real beast, but the frogs aren't literal. How does that work? How is that congruent with just even logic? Kings from the east. Verse 13 says, and I saw coming, and the word coming is italicized in your books, in your Bible, coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, three unclean spirits like frogs. Who's the dragon? Satan. Who's the beast? Who's the false prophet? Or the second beast? Emperor, cult, emperor worship, pagan worship. Anyone have anything else on that? Gary, you agree with that? Haley agree with that? Absolutely. Stafford North agree with that? Absolutely. But there are some, particularly the futurists, who say, hey, this is a literal dragon and a literal beast and a literal false prophet who's going to be coming out. And out of their mouth come frogs, but they're not really frogs. Or maybe they are frogs. They're not sure. If the dragon is a symbol for Satan, if the beast is a symbol for Rome, if the false prophet is a symbol or a metaphor for cult worship, pagan worship, shouldn't the frogs also be symbolic as well? And if they are, what are they for? Anybody have any guesses? What about the frogs? I will tell you that there are some scholars, men who are much smarter than I am, that say that the frogs are messengers, and the reason they call them messengers, not saying the messengers aren't right, but the reason that they're messengers is because they don't go in a straight line. They hop in different directions, spreading the news from the dragon. What do you think about that, Rob? Who are the three frogs? Any ideas, anyone? Yep. Okay. They're messengers, sending out a message of lies, a message of untruth. They are unclean. The message then is unclean. Going back to Leviticus 11, they are an unclean messenger. John 8:44 talks all about the father of lies, the devil, Satan, the deceiver, a message going out. A message going out to have everybody gathered together for a great physical battle, maybe, Gary? No? What is their message? Unclean spirit is the focus. Spreading untruth, lies. And you look up on the screen, you see Barnes, who's a historicist in his writings. He believes that the three frogs, the unclean frogs, represent paganism, the papacy, and Islam. We've talked about that. Okay, let me go back here. If the dragon, the beast, the false prophet, and the frogs are a symbol, does it make sense that Armageddon would be symbolic as well? We win. How many of you would say the majority of the public or the world would say the Battle of Armageddon in the book of Revelation is going to be a literal battle? Yeah, and I got some great pictures up here to show you what it looks like because, you know, we have that technology. It's the worldly view, and it's visual. We're a visual people, and that's why that's what we think of when we think of the four horsemen. We think of Revelation, we think imagery, we think death on a horse, war on a horse. We think of all this stuff, and that's what the media sells as well. But aren't those frogs going out? You know, seriously, if you're going to say frogs are not the truth, isn't that part of the truth, Mr. Payson? But we're reading in the 21st century. Okay, but I'm talking about the world today. How does the world look at it today? But it's written for you too. So what did it mean to them, Andy? No, I'm asking you, what did it mean to them? Well, no, because they haven't been built yet. He doesn't think that the first century Christians were digging bomb shelters. You agree with that, Dad? Did they perceive this as the end of the world, a great battle at Mount Megiddo, at Harmageddon or Armageddon, which you'll hear? Right. Now, in the Didache and the writings of the Apostolic Fathers, those that occurred right after, they don't see this big battle coming at the end of the world at a location that technically, Gary, I want you to see if you agree or disagree, or Wayne, does not exist. Mount Megiddo does not exist. There's Tel, there's a valley, but there's no mount. If you look at the language, and we'll get to it in a minute. For they are spirits of demons performing signs, these are talking about the little froggies, which go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them together for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. Well, this has to be physical then. There's going to be a great war with God. Is that what that says? Read it closely. And where it says war of the great day of God, what if I said war on the great day of God? Does that make it a little different? The New American Standard Bible has the word of. NIV, ESV, the NET Bible, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I highly encourage you to read that online. You can download it, get your copy of it. It's very good. They have great, incredible notes. Gary, were you going to say something? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought your hand went up. Is this a physical war? If not, what are they talking about? First off, the spirit of demons, and I have this in the next slide, I think. It's not the spirit of devils like the King James has. The New King James Version actually corrects it. The spirits of demons performing signs, frogs going out performing signs, which go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them together for the war on that great day of God, or of that great day of God, the Almighty. Is this a battle with God? Or is it a battle that takes place on the day that God designates a battle to take place? Not physical, per se, but perhaps a spiritual judgment on the day that God determines, because we know that He's in control. Agree or disagree with that, Mr. Witcher? I'm tossing stuff out here. Something's got to stick somewhere. No comment. Absolutely. And they won't have time to blaspheme or repent.
So you can gather as many people as you want to for any war that you want to get ready to fight any time you want, but if the other side doesn't fight, there's no war.
Yeah, it would be like gathering all those 200 million together, and they get together like, we hate you, God, and God goes, it's over. And really, it's already over. The battle's being waged on an individual basis. The battle for our soul is the one that is relevant to you. And I'm not saying we don't worry about others. I'm saying that the ultimate war is won. We choose which side. Wouldn't it be great if you were playing a sport and you're like, okay, before the game, this team wins. Whose side do you want to play on? Well, I want to be on the Redskins side. You know, and then the Redskins will win the Super Bowl or the Chiefs. Well, we're going to go with the Redskins because they're going to win. I'm going to root for the Redskins. We know the outcome. Do you realize? I mean, I know we say, hey, we know that, you know, God's won the war. We already know who's victorious. We get to go into the future. It's like Back to the Future. You already know the outcome. What a blessing that is. But what a reminder it is to us to live our life daily fighting that battle, like it talks about in Ephesians 6. Any other comments on that? We're taking care of the wounded. Okay? The battle, well, and I agree the battle's been won overall, but I think the battle for our souls is an individual basis, and it's not about taking care of the wounded. It's about making sure that we can get more traitors to come to our side. Yep, absolutely. Okay, let me see what's next here. Covered that. Here we go, like an aside, it's in parentheses. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Remind anybody of anything? Who? Who said that? Jesus? Where? Huh? Okay, but where in the Bible specifically? I mean, he was sitting behind a tree. Matthew 24. Yeah. Behold, I am coming like a thief. What does that mean? The thief doesn't announce his presence. John 10:10, what does that say about the thief? The thief comes to what? Steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life abundantly. They're gathering together for this war. If it was a physical war, they don't know when the battle is. Well, when's the battle? Mr. Witcher plus 10 for his whole section over there told us. It's now. There's a battle for your soul right this moment. Who stays awake, blessed is the one who stays awake. This is the third beatitude. So that he will not walk about naked and men will not see his shame. What in the world does that mean? We're talking about Jesus Christ coming, and the next thing you know, he's talking about people keeping their clothes on. William, and then David. To be ready. That you're reading from Matthew Henry's commentary? Okay. David? You think the same thing? You're actually going to agree with Bill? You're not sure what he said, but you agree with him. Oh. You got to be ready. Parable of the 10 virgins, right? You don't know when the bridegroom's coming. You got oil, you better have your oil ready. You better be prepared. You don't want to be found naked. You don't want to be found unprepared. Anyone else? Anybody that would like to agree with Dave who agreed with Bill, whatever he said? I put this in here in this part. This is a historicist professor. It says historian professor, but he's also but I want to read this. The average age of the world's greatest civilization has been 200 years. And again, this isn't fact-checked or anything like this. I just think the quote is very interesting as we get into it. These nations have progressed through this sequence, from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, from dependence back into bondage. Anybody ever read that, heard that before? Thoughts on that? Human nature. Sound like our country, Carol? Sounds like most countries, right? In some way. You know, we talk and you've heard that people that go to some of these third world countries that They have a spiritual faith. They seem to be able to be content and joyful with nothing that we have. But again, contentment, joy, does not come from circumstances. It comes from an understanding and a faith in the promises that God has given us. Any other comments on that? Where do I think America is on that statement? I agree with that. Where is America on that statement? Apathy? Dependence? Dependence into what? Depending on what? The government? Anything but God. But you know what's great about that statement back here? You know what's great about that? Our final resting place in eternity is not determined by our nationality. And whether we are a nation of heathens, or a Christian nation, or a Muslim nation, it is determined by my relationship, my worship, my focus, my obedience to God, not what somebody in this section does. America is not a chosen people. Those who follow Christ, those who follow God, those who are obedient each day in their life, that's the chosen. Now for the fun stuff. And they gathered them together to a place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon, or Armageddon. Battle, war. These are the photos on the internet, just pulling up the word Armageddon that says, hey, this is what Armageddon is. You usually don't bring a picture up if you go to Armageddon or Harmageddon and then go to Google Images and says, this is symbolic. Don't see that. Very rarely. So do we have it wrong? Is this an actual war? That's Tel Megiddo. You can see Nazareth off to the top left, Mount Tabor, Hill of Moreh. Now that's the tell. What is a tell? And I don't mean like when you're playing cards or anything, you've got a tell where you scratch your nose every time. What's a tell? City, it's a hill. With one civilization, when it gets wiped out, the next one comes in, what do? They clear everything else out, or do they build on top? Gary, you've been over there. I mean, you probably really legally, technically haven't told us. You can tell us you've been over there. You ever been to a tell? Okay. Tell us about a tell. It's a mound. So if you cut away this and look at the strata, what do you see? Yeah, if I cut a layer out, if I sliced it like a piece of cake, chocolate, by the way, what does it look like? What do you see? Just dirt? It's a very industrious city. You see civilization over civilization, civilization. So when they do a dig, an archaeological dig, they don't go from the side. They remove one level, and this is not a process that's done in a week or a year, century. And we have more archaeological finds and discoveries in the past 100 years than the 2,000 years previous. And they find more stuff every day. And every time they find something which is so great and so amazing, all it does is say, hey, you know what? The Bible was right. This city did exist. That person did exist. If you ever want to do, it's not a light reading. Does anybody else get Biblical Archaeology Review? Gary, you're such a geek. I love that magazine. It always reinforces, wow, you know, I don't doubt that these places exist. I like when they find it and say, hey, Jeff, here's another reason, here's another proof that you can use in your apologetic discussions with people to say, hey, this is what it said. You know, when we talked at the beginning of this year about the earth being in that steady state For 2,500 years, everybody thought that the earth was eternal, and it always existed, it always will exist. And then in 1927, Edwin Hubble in the Mount Wilson Observatory in California, he looks up there and he sees a shifting of the red light. He's like, whoa, he must have had a starting point. Changed science forever, because science was like, no, 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 no. And when I was growing up, when I heard the word Big Bang, I was like, no, it was God. Man, now I think God said, boom, let there be light, and there it was. Science proves that there was a point in time, before there was a point in time, that the universe became to exist. So you have a point to where out of nothing came something, or out of nothing came something because God spoke it into existence. Somebody who is outside of the natural. When we see this, when we look at this, when we cut through, we see Tel Megiddo. We see, this is another picture of it today. I just put a couple of photos up there to show you what it kind of looks like. This you can't really see, but taking Megiddo is like capturing 1,000 cities, Pharaoh Thutmose III said. Why did he say that? Because it was a bottleneck. This is where battles would take place. It was strategically a place that if you could control that, you could control entry and exit everywhere, correct? Anybody ever been? You ever been there, Gary? Anybody ever been to Wayne? Were you there during like the battle of... Can you tell me something about it or share with us? Megiddo is not a mountain. It is what? It's a hill or valley, the Valley of Megiddo. A lot of battles. Yeah, and we're going to get to those in a few moments. Yeah, you think you could fit 200 million people there? The horses? Yeah. We'll see here. There's much vain speculation about this. Let's go through. Where am I at? Oh, did I skip one? I'm sorry. Refers to the city of the hill Megiddo. It's found only in this passage. That word is found here. How many books, how many movies, how many pictures, paintings, everything like that have been made about one word? And probably, if, you know, in my estimation, in my study, and please disagree with me if you feel the way, that 99% of those are probably all wrong. Famous battles. We'll say this up here on the map. You can see the map here that, oops, how do I get this to go? There we go. Okay, there goes Megiddo, there goes Mount Tabor. This is where Brock's men came up from Sisera. Gideon's brothers were killed. What's that? Yep, Saul and Jonathan died right there. And when you go to the futurist point of view, bless you. She's my wife, I have to say that. Even if it's during there will likely be a coalition of powers from the eastern countries and will probably be led by Red China. Their way is cleared for a rapid force march and Banzai charged by drying up of the Euphrates River. This sort of thing has been made technically possible by the Russians' recent construction of a dam near the headwaters of the Euphrates. This is Hal Lindsey thinking that this is going to be an actual place. This is the kings of the north. This is the kings of the east. This is where they're all coming in for this giant battle, this literal battle here. What is that coming up? Whoop. So is this just a spiritual? And if it's a spiritual battle that's going to take place, why use Megiddo? Why call it Mountain Megiddo? Why call it place of slaughter? If it really wasn't a mountain, and it was simply a hill or valley or a tell, why say mountain? And what would that have meant to the first century Christians who obviously knew about the battles, Saul, Deborah, Barak, all those? What would it mean to them? Anyone? No wrong answers unless it's wrong. What do you think, Gary? Why Megiddo? Bless you. What would we say? What could we say today? Hey, he met his Waterloo. Old people. Me. What if I said, even if I said he met his Alamo? And I don't mean the rental car. Yeah. What if I said the Battle of Bunker Hill? He met his Bunker Hill. Or what's the actual name of the hill? Breed's Hill. Very good. You get the indication that there was a battle that took place. Waterloo, he met his Waterloo. He met his defeat. He met his Megiddo. He met his Armageddon. This is where it takes place. Does that fit? What do you think, Lee? Okay. Any comments? Any other points? Anything you'd like to make? Any disagreements? Again, this is a book that's highly figurative in its writings. They're not ever saying that I have it all figured out at all. This is my best interpretation through my study, through reading the 40, 50 different commentaries and books on the subject. This is my take on it. I've tried to give you through this the information to say, hey, this is what it would mean to the first century Christians. Rome is going to be defeated. God wins. Evil loses. Righteousness prevails. We could close the book on Revelation really right here. The rest is more detail. Andy, you have a comment? And we're going to stop there, so we're going to pick up in verse 17 next week. But Andy, please feel you're free to share.
There would be a battle there at all because Jesus go like that and Satan disappears. That's the end of it.
That's the end of it. It doesn't make any sense. Miss Johnny? Revelation 2:10, remain faithful to death. You will receive what? What's that? Yeah, help you to be overcomers. You receive the crown of life. Any other comments? Flies pretty much in the face of what the world tells us and what Armageddon in the Revelation is about, correct? But to that first century Christian, it was about hold fast, remain faithful. That Roman Empire will not last. The war has been won. The victory is yours. How long? Until he comes again. Any comments? Anything else? If not, thank you guys so much, and we'll finish up chapter 16 next week. I'm done, Al, if you want to kill that.